At that time, upasamritya, withdrawing, giraha, speech, sahasranahi, Bhishmadeva, who was expert in thousands of sciences and arts. Vimukta Sangam, completely freed from everything else. Manaha, mind. Adipurushe, under the original personality of Godhead. Krishna, unto Krishna. Lasat Pitapate, decorated with yellow garments. Chaturbhuje, unto the four-handed original Narayana. Puraha, just before. Stite, standing. Amilita, widespread. Drik, vision. Vyadarayat, fixed. Translation, thereupon that man who spoke on different subjects with thousands of meanings and who fought on thousands of battlefields and protected thousands of men, stopped speaking, and being completely freed from all bondage, withdrew his mind from everything else and fixed his wide open eyes upon the original personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, who stood before him four-handed, dressed in yellow garments that glittered and shined. So purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. In the momentous hour of leaving his material body, Bhishmadeva set the glorious example concerning the important function of the human form of life. The subject matter which attracts the dying man becomes the beginning of his next life. Therefore, if one is absorbed in thoughts of the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, he is sure to go back to Godhead without any doubt. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita in the 8th chapter, texts 5 to 15, which here are in the purport. 5. And whoever at the time of death quits his body remembering me alone, at once attains my nature. Of this there is no doubt. 6. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, that state he will attain without fail. 7. Therefore, Arjuna, you should always think of me in the form of Krishna, and at the same time carry out your prescribed duty of fighting. With your activities dedicated to me in your mind and intelligence fixed on me, you will attain me without doubt. 8. He who meditates upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his mind constantly engaged in remembering me, undeviated from the path, he, O Partha Arjuna, is sure to reach me. 9. One should meditate upon the Supreme Person as the one who knows everything, as he who is the oldest, who is the controller, who is smaller than the smallest, who is the maintainer of everything, who is beyond all material conception, who is inconceivable, and who is always a person. He is luminous like the sun, and being transcendental, is beyond this material nature. One who at the time of death fixes his life air between the eyebrows and in full devotion engages himself in remembering the Supreme Lord will certainly attain to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. 11. Persons learned in the Vedas who utter Omkara and who are great sages in the renounced order enter into Brahman. Desiring such perfection, one practices celibacy. I shall now explain to you this process by which one can attain salvation. 12. The yogic situation is that of detachment from all sensual engagement, closing all the doors of the senses and fixing the mind on the heart and the life air at the top of the head. One establishes himself in yoga. 13. After being situated in this yoga practice and vibrating the sacred syllable Om, the supreme combination of letters, if one thinks of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and quits his body, he will certainly reach the spiritual planets. 14. For one who remembers me without deviation, I am easy to obtain, O son of Pritha, because of his constant engagement in devotional service. 15. After attaining me, the great souls who are yogis in devotion never return to this temporary world, which is full of miseries because they have attained the highest perfection. Sri Bhishma Deva attained the perfection of quitting his body at will, and was fortunate enough to have Lord Krishna, the object of his attention, personally present at the time of death. He therefore fixed his open eyes, upon him. He wanted to see Sri Krishna for a long time out of his spontaneous love for him. Because he was a pure devotee, he had very little to do with the detailed performance of yogic principles. Simple bhakti yoga is enough to bring about perfection. Therefore, the ardent desire of Bhishma Deva was to see the person of Lord Krishna, the most lovable object. And by the grace of the Lord, Sri Bhishma Deva had this opportunity at the last stage of his breathing. So, Tadopasam Nitya Gita Sahasranir Vimukta Sangang Manari Purashe Krishnela Satpita Pate Chaturbhuje Purastite Millita Dring Vitarayat. So, Om Ganat Timananda Shah Gananjana Shlakya Chakshur Meditam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. So, of course, in this particular description of Bhishma Deva, we're dealing with a pure devotee, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and one who has no karma or anything like that. But in the case of those who are what we call karmis, vikarmis, because actually there's a distinction between karmis and vikarmis. Karmis technically means those who are performing some pious activities under the Vedic direction for upliftment in the material realm, especially Swarga, to go to heaven. And vikarmis means those who don't obey the Vedic injunctions, even the materialistic Vedic injunctions, and they're going down. So there's karmis and vikarmis, and generally everybody in Kali Yuga, 99.999%, they're vikarmis. So for those particular entities, that's interesting, persons, whatever, and actually only in the human form of life do you accrue karma. In the other forms of life, you just work it out. Like in the lower species, you're just working out. It's not that a dog can accrue karma or a cat. For example, I was just in Fiji, and there was a cat who just, Haribo, there's a cat who was playing with a rat, a baby rat. And I was thinking, you're so sinful. But actually it wasn't sinful, because that's allotted for a cat. A cat can play with his food. You understand? Sometimes the children are told by the parents, don't play with your food. But actually the cat, he does play. He just lets it go. And of course when the Lord appears in his different incarnations where he kills demons, sometimes he plays, not with his food, but he plays with the demons. Like Lord Varaha lets the demons go, Hiranyaksha, and then pull them back, let them go, just play. He's having a good time. So even the cats are doing that. Anyway, so I was thinking, what a sinful cat. But actually it wasn't a sinful cat, because he's allotted to do that, and cats can't commit sins. So why should we get angry at animals? They're just doing their thing. Anyway, so human form of life, you can do that. So really for those who are karmis and vikarmis, what determines what happens in the next life is more than what they're thinking of at the time of death. And I'll explain that, I'll unpack that. There's another factor that comes into play, and the factor is their karma. Two things determine what a vikarmi or a karmi is going to have, or type of body in the next life. One thing is their consciousness, which we call their desire, and the other thing is their karma, their bank account of karma, bad or good bank accounts. And, oftentimes we give the example that if someone is very romantic, watches a lot of Bollywood films, which I always mention here, watches a lot of Bollywood films feeling very romantic, and he has bad karma, or not such good karma, and then he takes birth as a pigeon in his next life and gets to be very romantic at least 50 times a day. Vivaha Yagya, 50 times a day with different pigeonettes. So, and if one has really good karma and is romantic, he goes to the heavenly planets and gets to play with the apsaras. So, so it really is those two things. And oftentimes I give the example of one who wants to buy a car. Like, for example, if you have very little money, or you have no money and you just want to borrow money to buy a car, then you probably get a really cheap car. One of these imported cars from Japan that are old, right? They sell them here. That's why the roads are full of cars here now, more and more every year. And for example, in Fiji, the government has made the cheapest car to be something called a Prius, because there's no taxes on them. So Fiji is like 90% Priuses, and you can't move on the roads anymore. So anyway, so if you want a car and you have very little money, then you get a cheapo. And if you want a car and you have a lot of money, then you probably get a Tesla or something like that. And you don't know what a Tesla is. No, you don't. That's a really expensive car. So, or Mercedes, or if you have a lot of money, you get a Maserati. None of you know what that is. Anyway. So that's what determines someone who's a karmi or vikarmi in terms of their next body. And we find in the Bhagavad Gita the description that this is due to the subtle body, linga sharira, that is the astral body, sometimes called like that, carrying the conception of life from one body to another, gross body to another. And the example given in the Gita, of course, is just like the air carries aromas from one place to another, then the subtle body carries the conceptions of life from one body to another. And someone is attracted to taking birth in a particular type of womb, a particular mother, a particular father. Just like I was asked the question, like the devotee in Fiji, why is it that I take so much after my mother, or father, whatever? And I said, well, first of all, they're asking, does that mean that the body shapes the consciousness? And actually, if one's attached, the gross body does shape the consciousness to a certain extent. I mean, obviously, if someone takes intoxication or something like that, then the consciousness gets really diminished. But one gets a particular type of body in tune with one's previous consciousness. In other words, one's attracted to a particular mother or father according to one's particular consciousness. So it's not an accident that you got that mother or that father and that father. It's just not an accident. It happens because you wanted it. And if they're not so nice to you, you asked for it. Anyway, or you had bad karma. It's your fault. Don't blame your parents. You chose them. And the parents, of course, another point is at the time of the conception, that's why we have this Garbhadan Sanskara in the Vedic system, time of conception, they're calling for a particular type of child. So you're calling for particular parents, and they're calling for you. They're saying, I want a lusty child, basically, 99% of the times, isn't it? I want someone who's full of lust, because that's what their consciousness is like. And so the child comes out full of lust, angry, and they wonder, why did I get a child like? I mean, let's give the example in the Bhagavatam of Maharaj Anga. Maharaj Anga, he was a nice guy, king, and he was married to the daughter of fear personified. And he had good consciousness, but his wife, she was... Anyway, because the girl generally takes after the father, boy generally takes after the mother. I take after my mother. Because she's a teacher. Yeah, it's true, actually. My mother's a teacher, and she's very educated, just like, practically a PhD in education and everything like that. And even in 91, she's still trying to teach me. So, So, so anyway, so getting back to that story, so Maharaj Anga, he was good, but he had a son, and his son took after his wife. And his wife was, really pretty bad qualities because she was taking after her father. And they had a wonderful kid, his name was Vena. You understand? And Vena, anyway, he was so nice, he used to play with his friends and kill them after he played them. That's a Bhagavatam story, for those of you who know the Bhagavatam. And then, after he killed them, he came back, his mother would say, what, where are your friends, Vena? And he said, I killed them. And because he was the king's son, he could get away with that stuff. So, basically, his father took sannyas because of that. He said, this is a horrible son, but actually it's great to have him as a son, because he gives me an excuse to get the hell out of here. So, anyway, so that was the story. And so, anyway, so then later on, there was a good kid produced. Of course, a good kid means Prithu, the incarnation of Godhead, because at that point they were able to do some genetic engineering. In other words, it's called churning there in the Bhagavatam. But they were able to adjust the genes, so they got rid of the bad genes. And he became Bahuka, and the good genes, that became Prithu and his wife. That's pretty good. You have a child, and the child is him and his wife. But anyway, that's the incarnation of God, Prithu. So anyway, so there are many examples of this. I mean, just in common life, you can see this. What do they say? An apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So the children are like the parents. So that's why we have this. So anyway, so getting back to the point, so the parents are calling a particular child, and the child is reaching out for particular parents. There's no accidents like that. So now so that's just the karmis and vikarmis. So let's start talking about someone like Grandfather Bhishma, who is basically not a karmi or a vikarmi. Although he did make quite a few mistakes in life. In another class we'll talk about his mistakes, why he made his mistakes, and what his problem was. Anyway, so I'll just briefly say, he made his mistakes because he was attached to rituals rather than the purpose behind the rituals. In other words, he was attached to telling the truth rather than understanding the purpose of why you should tell the truth. And sometimes you shouldn't tell the truth because it'll uphold religious principles to tell a lie, especially if you're protecting someone. If you're protecting someone, you could save their life by telling a lie. Tell a lie. So he didn't understand that particular point at that particular juncture, but it was also pastime of the Lord. So anyway, but Bhishma Dev was a pure devotee, and he was always thinking of Krishna. Of course, he's one of the Dwadasa Mahajanas, one of the 12 great authorities on Krishna consciousness and also on Varnashram, as previously in this chapter and explicitly in the Mahabharata. He describes the details of Varnashram, the duties of a king, the duties of the different Varnas, very, very expertly, how to be a king. So Bhishma Dev was, anyway, pure devotee, and obviously he's always thinking of Krishna. And he had that particular relationship of Krishna in the Vaikuntha form. So his relationship was actually quite chivalrous, but it was based on reverence, the Vaikuntha form. Whereas the devotees in Braj, their relationship with Krishna is in the two-arm form. Incidentally, even in Braj, when Krishna kills the demons, he does it as an expansion in four-arm form. You know that? He doesn't do it as in his original form. In the original form, it's just intimate dealings between him and the devotees. So anyway, Bhishma Dev, he had a Vaikuntha mood. Whereas the pure devotees in Vrindavan, they can't relate to that Vaikuntha mood. Like the example of the gopis, when they were looking for Krishna, and Lord Narayan Chaturabhuj came out, and then the gopis said, basically, please accept our humble obeisances. Where's Krishna? They didn't say, you are a worshipable deity, we'll meditate on you. They just said, Narayan, they took just Narayan or Vishnu, to them was like Google Maps. You understand? You understand what I mean by that? You know, you look at in Google Maps, you got it on the phone. So they just wanted directions. Did he go that way? Did he go that way? Of course, Srimati Radharani, she basically had so much love that Vishnu's extra two arms disappeared. That's a famous Chaturbhuj story. So, but as far as the residents of Vaikuntha Loka, they worship the four-armed form of the Lord in a mood of awe and reverence. So Bhishma Dev was able to fix his mind, or had his mind always fixed on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the question is, how do we do it? And I think that's the real big question. Not how Bhishma does it, because, you know, he's a pure devotee. And Prabhupada gives a hint here in the purport. It's very hard to just like fix your mind on Krishna 24 hours a day. Like if you could put, I remember one devotee, he was a Sankirtan devotee, and he just put pictures of Krishna everywhere in his van, you know, every single, probably even the windshields, you know. But even on the steering wheel, so every time he turned the steering wheel, Krishna did a flip, you know. So is that the way to do it? You know, my glasses or something like that. You know, one-way mirrors, so you just see mirrors there, and I just see Krishna. But not really. Actually, Prabhupada gives a hint, not just a hint in reciting the verse, he actually tells us in reciting from the 8th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. He says, "You should always think of me in the form of Krishna and at the same time carry out your prescribed duty of fighting." So in the Bhagavad Gita we find this description that Brahmarpanam Brahmahavir Brahmano Brahmatena Gantavyam Brahma Karma Samadhinam. Some of you may not know that verse. That's a famous verse. That if one meditates on their service for Krishna, then that service, in other words, by making I'll give you the translation, by making a full contribution to Brahman, which means serving Krishna, then it's like offering ghee into the fire. And then when you offer ghee in the fire sacrifice, the ghee becomes purified. Like Prabhupada said, even the smoke of a fire sacrifice is purifying. Ordinarily, smoke is not purifying. It can kill you. So, but when Prabhupada was doing his fire sacrifice, sometimes they'd keep the windows closed, so, you know, because the neighbors would get upset too if they open the windows. And so actually even one time I think the fire department came. So, but the Prabhupada said that smoke is purifying. So the same activity that one is doing or one is acclimated to doing in this world, if one does it for Krishna and meditates on it and understands that it's for Krishna, you know, several different things. Like Rupa Goswami says, you know, Anyabi Lashadashanyam Gyanakarma Navartam Anukulyena Krishnanushilanam Bhaktirutamam. That positive service for Krishna is to do what he wants and also be active at it and also be doing it in a devotional mood. So if you're doing whatever activity you do for Krishna, then that's actually thinking of Krishna. Like if you're driving your car, instead of trying to chant your japa at the same time, which devotees do as they're shifting the gears, makes it very difficult. Here in these countries where you have the driving on the right side, it's very difficult because you're chanting with your right hand, and the left hand you're shifting if you have a shift car. And so there's no space or no other extra hands for the steering wheel. You know, you need 4 arms like Lord to drive a car. So, you know, where I come, it's really easy to chant and drive because you just put your bead bag on top of your shift knob. And you shift with your right hand. So, in other words, you should concentrate on driving if you're going to drive. Because it is quite dangerous, you know. If you're trying to think of Krishna and see the form of Krishna while you're driving, you will probably see something else very soon. So yeah, so you concentrate on that, and you understand your service is a manifestation of Krishna if you meditate on your service, like, uh, but that means understanding something we call varnashram. We've heard descriptions of varnashram. Of course, varnashram is external. That was rejected as the ultimate by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when Ramananda Roy was speaking to him. But there are aspects of varnashram that are extremely important to apply in the Krishna consciousness movement. Like Prabhupada did say that the spiritual master's duty, or one of the spiritual master's duty, after chanting Hare Krishna, is to engage the disciple according to their psychophysical nature. Now, unpacking those words, psychophysical means varnashram, right, doesn't it? Because we have different psychophysical natures. We have Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras. I mean, not in a technical sense, but in terms of an inclination sense. And we have brahmacharis, grahastas, no vanaprasthas, and sannyasis. It's interesting, in Fiji, there's no brahmacharis anyway. They're a rare species. They're endangered, so they're put on the endangered list. Nobody is allowed to shoot them. None of the ladies are allowed to shoot them with their eyes. That's it. Boom, like, what is that called? Stringless bows. Anyway, for you brahmacharis. So anyway, so you have different propensities. And really, if you want your mind to be engaged in what you're doing, which is important, Savaya Mana Krishna Padaravindayo, then it's important to do something that can engage your mind. I mean, that may appear to not make sense. If you want your mind to be engaged fully, you have to do something that will engage your mind. What I mean by that is has something that you can be absorbed in, and you have to determine that. And the spiritual master or guide or mentor or whatever helps you determine that. I mean, for some people it may be deity worship, and like for Tilakini it's cooking. Where is she? Oh, there she is. It's cooking. Her mind is absorbed. I mean, if you put me in the kitchen all day long, I'd probably jump in the fire after a while. I mean, I know how to cook, but I mean, I would start screaming, because my mind wouldn't be able to be absorbed, even though it's a brahminical activity. But if you let me read or preach or chant or something like that, it's nice. I can do that pretty much all day long. So it's very important to understand that so that one's mind is absorbed. And what is the test that your mind is absorbed in Krishna in your service? Well, I'll tell you a very important test is what you dream of at night. If you are dreaming of Maya at night, like some apsara for the men or some handsome young man for the ladies, anyway, or whatever, or if you're dreaming of anything other than your service in Krishna at night, that means something during the day needs to be adjusted. That's actually the test. Because at night is like the time of death. Because you don't have control. It's not that you can just like your whole life be a jackass. And then at the time of death, go, Krishna. Just like that story Prabhupada tells about the king who asked the sage, how long is one attracted to the opposite sex? And the sage says, it doesn't go away. And the king said, I don't believe it. The sage said, come with me. Bring your young daughter. And they went to see an old man who was just dying, and his last breath was just about ready to leave his body. And the old man just looked at the young daughter, didn't look at the king, didn't look at the sage, and left his body, became a nice young girl in the next life. Anyway, so yam yam vapi smaram bhavam yasatayante kalevaram. So the point is, you can't just like make a switch at the time of death. It doesn't work like that. And also, as we often say, you don't know when you're going to die. Just like we had this nice devotee in Fiji, Gargamuni, who passed away a few months ago, and nobody knew. And nobody knows. You can't predict. I mean, you can, and we all like to go to the astrologer and say, what is my ayur daya? What is my span of life? When am I going to die? I always ask the astrologer, can I have a second opinion? Could you increase it? Give me some jewels or something to wear? That's what people do. Yes, we can increase it. How? Chanting Hare Krishna. Then we don't worry. And also, it says that if you chant the Bhagavatam and you're pure at chanting, then Yamaraj comes to here and then he can't do anything to kill you or kill anybody. That's there in the Bhagavatam. And the sages were reciting the Bhagavatam. So, anyway, you don't know, and so you really should be thinking right now of being attentive or conscious of Krishna, and you test that by seeing what you dreamt about last night. And usually it's not something so Krishna conscious you dreamt about last night. I mean, sometimes we dream about devotees attacking us or something, but or, we have some nightmare of like, let's say 1,000 devotees having problems and sending me emails simultaneously and freaking out by looking at my computer. I guess that's devotional service too. So really, that's the point. Yam yam bhavi smaran bhavatam yashati ante kalevaram. At the end of this body, you should be thinking of Krishna, and that's how we think. Absorbed in our service, and good sadhana. That's how we're absorbed in our service. But absorbed in our service, remembering who we're doing it for, which is what Krishna says here. Always think of me in the form of Krishna. At the same time, carry out your prescribed duty of fighting. And also thinking about our spiritual master, that we're serving with your activities dedicated to me. This is very interesting. And your mind and intelligence fixed on me, you will attain me without doubt. So this is really what Krishna is saying in the Bhagavad Gita. So any questions or comments? Questions, comments, arguments? No? Actually, Prabhupada said, here's a quote from the Nectar of Instruction. Prabhupada said, one who is always thinking of how to spread Krishna consciousness and doesn't deviate from the principles of Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada described him as a Mahabhagavad. And always means, that's an absolute term. Always thinking, spreading Krishna consciousness. So if we're always thinking of spreading Krishna consciousness, that's one thing. But it depends on one's psychophysical nature, really. What one can be absorbed in 24 hours a day. I mean, if you're worried, even anxiety can be absorption. If you're worried about, let's say, the deity worship, or if you're worried about a devotee, and praying to Krishna for a devotee, that's also absorption. Even anxiety can put you in absorption. Of course, you don't want to be like Kamsa, who is completely absorbed in Krishna 24 hours a day. That's in a negative mood. But it's better than nothing, isn't it? Better than nothing. Or you have Bali Maharaj's sister, who wanted to kill the Lord, who actually wanted to be the mother of the Lord and kill the Lord, but she was absorbed 24 hours a day in hate, which is nice. And, of course, she got the chance to be Putana. So, absorption in the Lord, even out of hate, ultimately benefits one. So if one has to hate anyone, hate Krishna. Isn't it? Why not? But better not. But it's better than not thinking of Krishna at all, right? Better than, anyway. I hate you, Krishna. I hate you. Why did you give me old age, Krishna? Make me young again. One time we were starting a temple. It was raining all the time. There was mud. We couldn't do anything. I didn't get angry at Krishna. I got angry at Indra. I even threw a stone in the air, and I started cursing and drinking. So, that was not Krishna conscious. So any questions? Yes? Nandabhai.
Maharaj, Vishnupada is one of the 12 Mahajans.
Yeah.
At the time of Draupadi's destroying, he did not object. So how?
That's a whole class in and of itself. Yeah, which maybe we'll reserve for tomorrow if we're going to continue the same chapter. That is a whole class. I mean, that would be like an hour to explain exactly, because there's many factors in that. That's what I hinted at. It's a question. It's actually examining the theories of morality. What is moral, what is not moral. I've spoken about that before here. What is considered moral, what is not moral? Is it rule-based or based upon the reaction or the results of an action? Really, that's what it boils down to. And Bhishma was attached to rule-based morality. But there's a reason. There's actually an internal reason for that, rather than result-based morality. And I can go into detail on that. I've given so many lectures on it. But let's wait. If you want, I can answer that question tomorrow in a whole class. So, any other questions? Quick answers. Yes, yes.
Thank you, Maharaj. You're saying how we should have a service that we feel absorbed in.
Yes.
But then also, sometimes it seems like a service which is difficult for our psychophysical nature to do is also very purifying.
Oh yeah, it's definitely purifying. However, if one wants their whole lives to be stable, I mean, for some time, yeah, we do it. I mean, we all do that. Not everyone, but I've done it many times. You do things, the needful. Like Prabhupada said, we do the needful. But if you think like your whole life doing something that really just is really a struggle and austerity, then I just refer back to the story of Gajendra Mokshana, where Prabhupada said, you should be in a proper situation to fight Maya. And Prabhupada wanted the devotees to be happy. So, yes, it's purifying. I mean, brahmachari should certainly go through that. It's nice. There's so many stories of brahmacharis in the Mahabharata. One guru asked his disciple to make sure that the irrigation ditches didn't have a break in them. So the disciple was going out, and there was a break, and he couldn't find anything to bridge the gap in the irrigation ditch, so he just laid down there while the water rushed over him. I don't know how he didn't drown, but anyway, so somehow or other he used his body. But but the guru didn't want to do that for the rest of his life, which would have been very short. So I think long term we should all plan for doing something that we really fits our psychophysical nature. I'm doing something that really fits my psychophysical nature. I'm happy doing it. My mind's not disturbed with doing it. I look forward to each day. But if you're getting up in the morning and you're saying, "Oh my God, another day. Can I sleep a little longer?" Like the alarm clocks, they have these snooze buttons. Oh, they used to when you had alarm clocks. Now you just use your phone. But the phones actually do the same thing. You can just press the button. All right, give me 10 more minutes of sleep. Oh, I don't want to wake up today. I got to do that today. Then I don't know if you can go on your whole life like that. I don't know. I mean, Prabhupada was doing something that was according to his nature. I mean, he's a pure devotee. And Arjuna was told to do something according to his nature by Krishna. He said, if you don't act, following my direction, you're going to be forced by your own nature to work. So, I mean, ultimately, it comes out. You can suppress or repress, but ultimately, what can I say? It comes out. The nature. Everyone's nature. And I'm not encouraging people to be independent or anything like that. That's not my concept. It's just it's up to us individually to make a long-term plan for our lives, so you can keep plugging away, as they say, for your whole life until you die. Because we've seen so many shooting stars. You know what a shooting star is? Well, it's like a meteorite. It's really bright, and then of course you're not supposed to watch the meteorites. It's considered inauspicious in the Vedic system. But anyway, so it's really bright. Boom, and then it gets dark, and it hits someone. Anyway, so we have to be careful we're not shooting stars. We had so many in our movement. Yeah, if you examine many of the devotees who did wonderful service in the first days of the movement, and you just ask, where are they now? And they did amazing service. Where are they now? Are they still like pushing the movement, or do they just like bloop, or or bloop, or just retire, or just go and get into just criticizing people? Sometimes you find I hate to say it, but sometimes there's older devotees who are on the internet and just like finding fault in other people. And that's their whole disservice to Krishna. So one has to be happy in Krishna consciousness. So if you're happy doing that, if someone's mode might be doing austerities and doing something against that may be their psychophysical nature. I haven't met too many people with that psychophysical nature, but that people really want to challenge like that. And that's all right. If you have the psychophysical nature, going to the Himalayas in the middle of the winter and sitting in ice cubes for Krishna, my blessings, right? It's not my psychophysical nature. My psychophysical nature is taking nice prasadam and being happy and resting enough at night, because if you don't rest enough, you get sick. We're not, at least most of us, are not like the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, Nijahara, Vahara, that they gave up eating and sleeping and ate 1 pat of butter every 2 or 3 days. Whew. Can you imagine that? Here's your prasadam for the week. Be happy. It's not my nature. What can I say? I need a certain amount of sleep. I need a certain amount of recreation. Whatever. So we have to understand long term. Because we want to be here for our whole lives. That means, for those of you young, it means like 60 more years or 70 more years. That's a long haul. 60 or 70 years. I'm up at about 50 years of the movement so far, close. And it's a long haul, but I've had a great time. It's been fun, because I've been engaged according to my nature. All I can say is my own experience. It's fun. I'm happy. But that same lifestyle may not be fun for someone else. Like people ask me, sometimes I'm traveling in the plane, and yes, I was talking to a couple, and they said, don't you get lonely? I said, I wish I was lonely more. Because everywhere I go, because they saw the send-off in Fiji where I had like 60, 70 devotees in the airport, and they said, don't you ever get lonely traveling like this with your family? I said, I got too many family members all over the world. I have too many children. No, we don't get lonely because, we're with devotees all the time. It's nice. The only time I get lonely is when I visit my mother. Because I want to be with devotees. I love her, but, she's not devotee. So, because I just feel lonely if I'm not with devotees. So, no, anyway, sometimes we are alone, but we just take shelter of Krishna and Prabhupada and read Prabhupada's books. It's not a problem. So you got to figure out, long term. Make a plan. He who fails to plan, plans to fail, as they say. I mean, Krishna consciousness, like right now, we're just learning this on the GBC level that you have to engage in strategic planning just the last few years. Before that, we just thought, Krishna will take care of everything. We just chant, and everything will be all right. But then we discovered we had so many problems, a lot of difficulties, legal problems and everything like that, because we didn't look at the reality of life. So now we're doing all this planning. We're concerned about succession. Succession means who's going to take over. Because then we just looked around at all the GBC and everybody's old. So how did we get old? What happened? There's a bunch of old men and women. And it gets to look like the cardinals in the Catholic Church after a while. Their only retirement is death, right? Real old people. So then you start to think, maybe we should plan. Who's going to become the next GBC? Well, we don't know. Krishna will figure it out when we die. It doesn't work like that. Krishna could do it, but he wants you to do something too. Man proposed. There's 5 factors of action. Krishna's only one of the 5. The rest are up to you. So, any other questions? Any question?
Oh, it's kind of related to Prabhu's question about Yudhishthira Maharaj.
Yeah.
He seemed to have a similar thing to Vishnudev. Is that correct, or was it different?
Yes. Yes, rule-based. That's true. Rule-based morality rather than result-based morality. But we can discuss that in the future. Yeah, that was true. He was attached to being it was actually more than that. Yudhishthira was actually proud of always telling the truth. There was pride there too. Whereas Bhishma, it wasn't that he was proud of always keeping his word, but Yudhishthira actually had this pride. I'm always telling the truth. I'm Yudhishthira. Always telling the truth. So it's a little different, but it's a similar type of explanation. Whereas, Krishna just does the needful. He could just tell Duryodhana, you need to cover yourself, Duryodhana. Because his mother was going to look at him and give him invulnerability. So Krishna's just like, he really is loose with everything. Don't be as loose as Krishna, I mean, just to draw people's affection to him, he pinches their babies, certain things you don't want to do. Right? Krishna he breaks butter pots just to draw the attention to himself. But if you can draw the attention to Krishna, then go ahead and break butter pots. But it won't. Okay, I think we have to end now because we have a big schedule. Krishna Chandra has worked out a way to torture me, so teach me I'm not the body. Okay, all glories to the Prabhupada, Ki Jai. These are all the devotees. Nice to see everybody. A lot of people watching.